which is a great concept. Commission is all about this. The only thing is, if you see how developments are in the discussions between the member states on a spectrum, which is actually prerequisite, you can say that the spectrum is like, you know, kind of a land on which you build actually, land plot on which you build your house. So if this land plot is not properly coordinated among the member states, you will not have coordinated introduction of the 5G in Europe. And the point is, yes, ultimately you will have it, but I think that idea should be to have it really by 2020, as this is the plan, across EU, to have the real then internal market, especially if we are talking about some sort of the applications, like for example, connected or autonomous vehicles, just as one example. All other examples is like Tony mentioned, and the point is that all these great things, Internet of Things, all these applications, health, finance, and so on, simply falls down off the cliff if you don't have the basic prerequisite, and that's connectivity. And not only connectivity, but reliable connectivity across the border. And this is what I think it's really key to get. And basically, the proposal of the Commission was in a great direction. I hope that the member states will actually take it and then, you know, have some sort of the courage to forget for the moment there, I would say, a bit sometimes selfish interest and really do something which is good for the internal market. Other 2 points which I think are very important and ongoing for the lot of entrepreneurs, big or small, it doesn't matter, is basically what's happening with the privacy regulations, the implementation of the general data protection regulation, network and information security, basically cybersecurity rules, and now upcoming e-privacy rules. I don't want to bother you with the details because some of this is very technical, but the point is that it can become very difficult for the smaller companies. Even bigger companies are struggling, and it will be a big question for the big systems whether they will be able to implement it on time, not to mention for the smaller companies. And again, we are facing the risk of possible fragmentation in implementation. So basically, again, we see in two, I would say, examples, and I will give the third example and close with this, is that the great idea, digital single market, to make a bit of a progress, to make things right, actually are pretty much ending in a bit of a different direction, which I think is worrying. And I think that now Commission in the last 2 years should really give a final push to do it right and overcome the resistance of the member states and really implement it. Otherwise, it will not be fit for the purpose. Third actual example, which we see, and I think it will be also very difficult for the many, especially startups, is basically copyright rules. They're always controversial, and of course, there are two very entrenched views there everywhere, I would say, in the world. But the thing is that what we see now on the table is it will be very difficult for a lot of smaller companies to actually basically control and filter the content on web. For example, if they're doing data analytics, and then basically checking is this a copyrighted content or not, and then get proper basically approvals to use or not to use this content. I would say at least what I heard from SMEs, and I met them on Tuesday, and they presented actually to the representative of the member states. Actually, it seems pretty impossible. So I think that we really have to be careful when we are designing all these rules, even with the good intentions, that we really don't end up actually in completely opposite direction. That's also about data flows, because we know that there are certain, let's say, localization policies in Europe based on certain, let's say, rules like accounting rules, tax rules, and so on, or for the health records, which basically keeps this data within basically geographical areas. I think that in Europe, we also need to start think a bit beyond borders and not to consider other member states as some sort of the incompetent or as the countries that simply shouldn't be trusted in a way, because I think that if you are talking about internal market, it's not just that you can come and sell from one country to the other and then this country is good when you can sell your product, but for everything else it's not. I think that we need to start think a bit beyond borders and beyond physical, and start to also treat data in that way like we are treating basically goods, which means the data, which is by definition basically much more borderless than any physical good. Then I think that Europe should start think actually in that way and start treating it that it can be stored anywhere, of course, provided that all the rules are complied with, like privacy, cybersecurity, and so on. But really use this and start to utilize this, because all this nice concept that we are discussing, if we just keep it localized, I don't think how all this will fly. I think that one of the issues is that in all good intentions that, for example, Commission has with the public funding is that, and of course, like you also, David, mentioned this, it is important to make sure that the publicly invested money is properly invested and that there are some sort of mechanisms of control. The thing is that I think it also comes from the logic that the main amounts of money that Commission is, in a way, redistributing is to the member states, meaning to the governments, and then governments are, through the national projects, moving it further. But the point is that one logic applies there because you have some sort of intergovernmental to governmental relation, and that, of course, that you need also to give, to keep these governments accountable, because this is also, you know, public money to public money, and that's okay. I think that the other thing is, of course, that then in all this transaction, this, I would say, commercial aspect and actually market aspect is totally forgotten, both with IP rights. It's a big issue because you have a clauses for example, commission-funded R&D projects, which says that basically you should give your IP rights to the basically to this project, which is very hard for the private companies that are participating in the publicly funded projects or public-private partnerships. And then you have, you know, from year on year, kind of, you know, that the private participation is getting actually down. It's getting down partly because of the bureaucracy, because at the end of the day, it's simply getting too slow the moment when you actually get this money, having in mind what time you need to invest to actually get to the point to even start receiving something. And second is, of course, these IP rights. And I think that this is a shame because these private partnerships are actually the way forward. And this is one of the way how some issues with the financing could also be, in a way, helped. I'm not say solved, but this could be one also of the mechanism how to do it. All the large scale, small scale, middle scale, it doesn't matter. But I think that we need to kind of overcome also the mentality issue that we have. First, like I was mentioning, with the borders, and then second, with the thing that, yes, okay to protect how public money is, let's say, invested, but in a way that you allow then people actually to use it and to really make best out of it.
I'm Eunice from the Luxembourg Innovation Agency. I have a question to the whole panel. What do you think about this concept of European Innovation Council proposed by Commissioner Moedas, which is now in a preparatory phase being planned for 2018-2020? And it should, we don't know what it will be exactly in 2021. So what are your thoughts? Do you think it's too late regarding the timing? What do you think this one-stop shop for entrepreneurs should be with all the inputs you gave with talents? We talked about the talents being stolen from Europe, so maybe we need some schemes to attract talents, to keep talents. So what are your thoughts on this European Innovation Council? Thank you.
I think this is a great question, and also to mention that Commissioner Moedas did something which is also very commendable, and this is the establishment of the European Funds of Funds, so-called Funds of Funds, which is a great thing. I think that the both initiatives are great. I would say it's never too late, and I think it's great to have such an open-minded commissioner who actually started really to change and kind of challenge from inside the models of working. Not that they were bad, they were good for certain periods of time, but now, you know, things changes. Markets are getting faster and faster. Other regions are getting, you know, ahead. So I would say that these are the great initiatives. Of course, like you said, we will need to see how it will be delivered. But I think it's a good start. And one of the good things with the initiatives of the Commission is that usually once it started, it's not always easy to change. But if it is good, it's good to stay, you know, and then to develop in a different mandate. But I would say that the Commission now has 2 years to basically deliver, I would say, on overall DSM strategy, and then also on other initiatives like this one. And I think that we need to kind of keep the positive mindset and try to really work with them and help them to actually deliver, rather than just say, well, you know, that's an initiative, let's see. Yeah, sure, we can wait until 2021 and see, but I would rather, you know, come to the Commission and say, hey, how we can help, right? I think that this is one of the issues that I also mentioned briefly when I was saying that the issue of basically IP rights and why basically participation of the industry in many publicly funded projects, especially by the EU, is actually getting lower and lower. That's one of the main reasons. And the thing is, the logic behind this was, and this is actually not coming specifically for some, as far as I know from the regulations, it's more like from the basically grant agreements. The thing is that the logic is that, of course, since this is a public money, it should be some sort of the public ownership, let's put it like this, meaning that public should be able to access it. One other issue is also the results of the research, meaning availability of the results of research, which sometimes are very difficult and sensitive for the companies just to be totally 100% public, at least at once. And that's not necessarily open data issue. It's supposed to be kind of branded with that, but I would say that there are serious IP issues there. And I think that, again, like I was saying, is we need to make a decision that it's okay to protect how public money is invested. But the key word is it's invested, which means that there needs to be some profit out of it. And this profit needs to be for the businesses, for the economy, for the society, and for the citizens. And the thing is that if this is not somehow, like you, Julie, mentioned, I mean, if this is not, this economics, it doesn't work, it will not work at all. And then the point is, why are we then making these investments in this project if this simply cannot be utilized? The point is to utilize it and to bring it to the market. In many occasions, what you have is that you have this money, it's invested, researchers are keeping their jobs, and then basically it's more for keeping their jobs and to running, like we can say, okay, we have a project, we publish the works, instead of having some results. And I think that we need to change this logic. Then this issue will be somehow solved, you know, along the lines on this, because the logic is then if you need to implement it, someone needs to, you know, implement this IP.